to show you right now is how you're going to make this little tiny pillow that's going to hold your needle. So that way it doesn't get lost inside your locker. Also, what this does with this little project is you learn the different type of stitches you'll be using for your sock monster. The stitching that we'll be learning is the running stitch and the overstitch. Now, first things first, you always want to have your fabric inside out. Now, since we have these two separate pieces, one piece is identical on both sides, and this side you can tell there's kind of like this faded looking side, and there's the really, really bright side. You want the faded side, the ugly side, the side that doesn't look as nice, to be facing you. You want it to be facing out. Now, since this side is identical on both sides, it doesn't really matter. When you do the sock monster, you always want it to be inside out. That's one of the first rules that we'll talk about. Your fabric always has to be inside out, ugly side out, however you want to think about it. So here is my fabric. I have, again, the nice side facing in. I have my needle already ready. So here's my needle on my thread, and I have my ugly fly knot here at the end. And this just goes to remind you about our second rule. Never, ever, ever tie your knot by the needle. I will always have students do this. They'll tie the knot over here. Don't do it. It's going to be horrible when you start sewing. So I'm going to get going. Here's my fabric. We're going to start the running stitch. Now the running stitch, you're just going to pick a corner, whichever corner you want to start in, and you're just going to push your needle through both fabrics and pull all the way through. Now the running stitch is going to go through one side, out the other, and back through this side to the side we started on. So I'll flip this over, I'll go through, get my finger out of the way, and pull. And I'll go back through and pull. And you keep going all the way down the side. Some of you may have sewn before, so you already know how to do this. One thing I want to tell you is I'm not sewing my stitches right at the ends. The reason why is you'll see these little hairs kind of coming off, and they'll keep just shredding as this fabric is staying there. If you do your running stitch too close to the edge, it might come off as these guys shred some more. So I just go like a little bit down. There's really no measurement, but as long as it's not right by the edge, you're fine. I just make sure it's not right by the edge on both. And you want to make sure your stitches are close. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this side. So that way we can show you what to do next. Now, I've already finished this one row, and I still have a lot of string left. I can still keep going. But what you're going to do when we do our little pillow is learn how to stop. What's going to happen is when you start sewing, you're going to want to use as much of the thread as possible till it's all done. But you need to make sure to have at least a finger's width of thread left, and I'll show you why. One thing I want you to notice too is that my stitching is very, very small and it's close together. If your stitching is really large, what will happen is when you flip it, there's going to be these big gaps in the way. If your stitching is small and close together, you won't have that space happening. So you want to make sure they're small. They don't have to be teeny tiny, but as long as you make them close together. But if they're too large, you'll start to have holes. So now I'm going to stop this. And how we do that is we'll do this the same way every single time. The last stitch you did, it doesn't matter if you end up on the same side you started with or if you end up on the other side. It doesn't matter. This is how you'll end every time. Wherever you're coming out, where your thread's coming out of the fabric, you're going to go to the stitch that's right next to it. And you're going to have your needle go right underneath. And you'll start to have this little circle happening. Then you'll get your needle and you pull it through the circle. And this will be the first tie. Pull, pull, pull. So that's one, and we want to do a knot. That's one. Get that little snag out of there. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go back under that one that we just went through. Then I'm going to put the needle through this loop. I'm going to pull, 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 and make the knot. And I'm going to cut it. You want to make sure to never cut too close to your knot, just in case it unravels. That's not going to be good if you don't have at least a little bit of a tail to knot it. Now, some people won't stop. They'll stop when they get right to the edge of their needle. And what will happen is the needle helps you make the knot. How I went under that last stitch and came back through and went through that circle. That's what you want. So you want to have at least that finger's length left. So that's our third rule. Use small stitches. Sorry, our third rule is use small stitches like I did. And then you want to start sewing when you have at least that finger's length of thread left. So when it's about right here from your needle, you want to stop. About an inch, inch and a half or so. You kind of eyeball it. So how you can do that manipulation. Now, one word of caution. If you don't stop, if you stop right by the needle, if you don't give yourself that length to make your last knot to finish your thread, I won't help. It's really, really hard. It's very, very difficult to make the knot. Usually students decide to just start all over again. And because I'm new now, I won't help you. I'll be the meanest teacher ever in the world. But you want to give yourself that length. That will help you make the knot. So I'm going to start my next stitch, the overstitch. I have a good amount of thread here, so I'm going to do my ugly fly knot again. Once, twice, 3 times. And then I roll it off. Makes that little circle. And I pull. Again, it doesn't matter which side you start on. I'm going to start on this side. Actually, I'll start on this side. Throw it off. No, it's going to throw me off if I go backwards. So I'm just going to start here by my last stitch. Again, I'm leaving a little bit of space from the ends on both sides. I don't want to get too close to that end or else it might come off. I'll pull all the way through. And now I'm going to go over the fabric. So now this gets a little confusing. When you do the running stitch, you go through and out to the side, back through that side and out. It's almost kind of like a seesaw, just going back and forth, back and forth. Now this one, I'll come out through this side and I'll put the thread over and go back in the side I started with. Ooh, get out of there, ugly fly knot. There we go. And sometimes it'll tug. So I came out the other side. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go through the front. Or what I'm calling the front anyways. Again, making sure that I'm not going too close to the edge on the fabrics. Again, just like before, you want to try to get as close as you can, so that way it doesn't come apart. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go through. You want to think of this one almost like a spiral-bound notebook. It's going to kind of do that over and around. This technique is only for using limbs, and I'll explain what I mean. Let me put this to the side. Here's this little pretend body that I have, and I have a little limb I made as an example for another class. And this is where I'm using that overstitch. You only do the overstitch when you're attaching a limb to the body. So like here's the little arm, the inside. You can see my ugly fly knot is hidden inside there. So when it attaches, you won't see that fly knot anywhere. And I'm going to go over. So I'm going to grab some of the body And I'm going to go through inside the arm. And I'll pull it out. And you pull it tight. So that's the overstitch. You're going to go in and grab. And that's how it attaches the body. So attach the little arm to there. So the overstitch is only used at this part. We're learning it on our little pillow so that way you guys know how to do the 2 stitches. But you'll only use it on your sock monster for that one. So let me go ahead and finish up this length of our pillow. Now here I finished to the end. I got really close to being too small. Here's about my finger's length. And I'm going to do the exact same thing we did before. So I came out on this side. I'm going to go to the last stitch that I made, and my needle's just going to go just right underneath it. Go underneath it. And now you'll see, because I waited a little too long, as I go through, this loop is kind of tiny. So I'll pull it underneath the stitch. I'll turn my needle around, and I'll just put it through that loop. We'll just go through there. So there's one, and I'll do it one more time. I'm going to go underneath that last stitch I just did. And I tend to hold on to the loop so that way it doesn't get all confusing like it did when I first did it. And I'll turn my needle around, go through, and pull. Now, those are the 2 stitches that we're learning. The third side of your pillow, you can do either. You can continue on doing the overstitch, or you can do the running stitch, however you want to close up this third side. We're going to leave this 4th side open because we're going to stuff it. We want to make the little pillow. So, we talked about stop sewing when you have a finger length of thread left, and how the overstitch is used to attach limbs only. So we had our little limb guy over here. We're learning it on our pillow, just that way we know the stitches. So in our next video, I'm going to show you how to stuff it and how to close your little pillow off. See you in a little bit.